Hello, fellow Amazonians. This is David for One Apollo with another Amazon topic for discussion. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about advertising on the Amazon platform. Recently, I've been seeing a couple discussion posts about how advertising ACOS, or the cost of advertising on Amazon, has been going up dramatically. And it's the increasing number of sellers on the marketplace that's driving up the cost of advertising. The more sellers we have bidding on keywords, the higher the price per click each seller has to pay. But first, I want to go into this post where I got the idea from. And it says Amazon is milking the advertising cow for all it can. But the cow is already sick. Keep going and it will die. Our decent selling products always shows up twice on the same page, one as sponsored and the other as itself. We do need a sponsored listing next to the actual listing. And what happens when you have multiple listings on the results page together is usually because you have multiple advertising campaigns as well as the organic listing that's highly ranked. And as you can see in the next line, it says, the morning I see one of our products being displayed 3 times, 2 next to each other, the third just one below. 2 of them are sponsored. So usually what happens is when your sponsored and your organic listings are highly ranked, then your sponsored, let's say your organic listing is ranked number 1 in that keyword, specific keyword that you also have a sponsored advertising bid on. And your organic usually will be the second, and then your sponsored will be number 1. So let's say from one top 4 listings on one keyword, and your sponsored listing from sponsored products will be number 1, and then your organic listing will be number 2. And I was thinking, how could there be a third one below it? And the third one would be a sponsored brand advertising campaign. So let's say it's a video or a placement. That's how you will get the third one. So 2 of them are sponsored, 1's organic. So there's a lot. If you have a highly ranked organic listing to begin with and you're advertised, you can take up a lot of real estate on the first top of search page. When we started advertising, campaigns in 2016 was about 8%. And before I go any further, I want to discuss a bit about what is ACOS for those who may not or are new to Amazon. And ACOS, or the average cost of sale, if you look at the little table here, is the total amount of dollars spent on advertising divided by total sales. An example would be, let's say for last month, you spent $5 advertising the product XYZ, and the product XYZ had $100 in sales, then your ACOS would be 5%. $5 of ad spend divided by $100 of sales. So that's how you determine what ACOS is. All right, going back to the post. Oh, and also, back in 2016, the Amazon landscape was much less competitive. Ever since, I think, around 2016 is actually when Amazon started courting a lot of Chinese sellers to sell on Amazon, and that created a very, very, very competitive marketplace for everyone. And being in China before and understanding how e-commerce works in China, it's extremely competitive in China, and there's a lot of black hat tricks, which are usually illegal or against the terms of service tactics they use, such as fake reviews, fake orders, transactions, and multiple accounts, and all those different things and tactics. It's very common in China. It's actually, they believe, doing those things is a necessity of succeeding in e-commerce. So I'm sure that also has played into what's happening on Amazon these days as well. But those good old days in Amazon are long gone, where you just throw something on there and it'll just stick and it'll sell without even ads. Unfortunately, it's much more competitive now. On the plus side, a lot more people are using Amazon these days too, so you do have a larger reach. So the upside is also much higher. It's just harder to get to that the echelon of high sales where winner takes most. Okay, let's see. Moving on here. It kept climbing steadily until it reached almost 40% in early 2023. All right, let's look at what the average ACOS is. Let's see. Did some research here. I'm going to zoom back out. So you can see here, the average cost of sales, ACOS, on Amazon is around 30%. And if you skip down below, what most Amazon sellers aim for is between 15 and 20%. So the average is 30%. All right. So 40% is pretty high. And I do believe 40% is very, very high. We usually ourselves, we aim for 10%. But I'll explain why how to determine what ACOS you should have or aim to have. So it kept climbing steadily until it reached almost 40% in early 2023. We tweaked, we used software, we watched and corrected manually with only some improvement. And really, software can only do so much. It does takes away the manual work of adjusting keyword bids, but creating the campaign structure is very intuitive where software can't help you. And creating that initial campaign is very important to the success of your advertising. And obviously it affects your ACOS and your performance of the spending and the return. So software is a small part of it. It's important, but it's not as big as the intuitive part of creating a campaign. So if you don't have the right structure in place, it will be hard to have a good ACOS for your campaigns. So we dramatically cut out our Amazon advertising budget. Products that do not sell without advertising were dropped, excluding newly launched items. And that is understandable, right? If you can't hit your ACOS advertising, then you're going to be overspending a lot, and therefore you will have a negative profit listing, and there's really no reason to keep carrying that on your account. So if it doesn't sell organically or without advertising, then it makes sense to drop it. We recently tested a few products that were very competitive, had sales with advertising, but it's in a very competitive category. Imagine computer accessory, right? That's a very competitive category. A lot of Chinese sellers in there. And we decided to cut advertising and reduce the sale price to see if that decrease in price point will help sales or like increase it from the baseline of instead of having a higher price and advertising. And it had a negative effect where we actually lost sales and rank from cutting advertising while dropping the sale price. And we dropped the sale price by about 5 to 10% too. So it's a significant amount if you think about it. But it had a negative effect. Our sales dropped compared to when we had a higher price and advertising. So we would suggest that try not to cut advertising in order to cut the price, because traditionally we have seen a negative result from that. And on the contrary, if you are selling purely organically, no advertising, we suggest you to raise your sale price or allocate a piece of your margins if there are enough margins for you to advertise. And we'll explain a bit about how to allocate percentages and what your ACOS goals should be. So let me finish this discussion real quick and we'll get to that. All right, our cash flow greatly improved. We now have much better breathing space. Amazon is generating tens of billions annually in advertising fees, but as sellers, we see their costs going north while sales stay flat. They're doing what they are doing. I disagree. It's a bidding system, right? If you have more sellers bidding on those keywords, then obviously the costs for advertising is going to go up. And if your sale price stays the same, or you're just having more competitors in your category, then it's just gonna cost you more, and so your ACOS will go up. It's just the marketplace economics. So it's not really Amazon doing it, it's just the other sellers. And the more competitive the category means that more new sellers are trying to break in, so they're going to be willing to lose money to get those sales. So maybe even lower sale price or just a very high ACOS, so they have a really high ad spend to break into the market. So it really is the marketplace instead of Amazon. So I wouldn't blame Amazon for this increased advertising fee or cost of advertising. Keep going, Amazon. Revenue will still go up for a year or two, then the cow will die. All right, so let's just go into how to plan your advertising budget and how to identify your ACOS goal. Ideally, when you set a goal for your ACOS, you want it to match the percentage of advertising budget you allocate from your sales. So for example, 5% of your sales is allocated to ads, then you should have a 5% ACOS. That means if you allocate $5 per $100 of sales, then you should aim to spend $5 to generate $100 of sales. So that way it covers each other exactly. And that means you can scale to infinity. Meaning that because if you're selling $100 of sales and you get $5 of ad revenue for ad budget, and $5 of ad budget generate $100 of sales, then you can technically keep scaling it up and up and up. So let's say $50 for 1,000 generate 50 ad budget for $1,000 of sale, and keep going up and up and up. So that's what I mean by you can scale to infinity, and you can keep expanding your advertising campaigns and budget to keep scaling your listing in terms of ad spend and revenue. But obviously, all advertising campaigns have a diminishing return, where the more ad spend you spend, the lower the results it will be in the long run in terms of per unit basis. So what that means by, let's say your first $100 of ad spend yields $1,000 of sales, it doesn't mean that $100,000 of ad spend will yield 10x, so $10 million of sales, if my math is correct. Because it'll be much less, because as you increase your ad spend, you go from a more narrow campaign, like a more sure bet keyword, to like a more broad and speculative keyword that you would choose. So the more speculative, the more broad, the more costly it will be, because you won't have high of a conversion. But ideally, the goal is to set your ACOS to whatever your percentage allocation of sales to your ads is. And the next advice we have on advertising on Amazon is keep track of your budget. Always keep track of your budget. Have a spreadsheet or use a software, whatever you need to do to keep track of how much you're spending versus what your allocation from sales per listing is. So just an example of what we suggest doing to give you an idea is, let's say month 0 product launch. You set aside $1,000 of advertising for this new listing you want to launch, right? So month 0, $1,000, you spend $1,000 in month 1, and it generates, let's say, $10,000 of sales. And if you have a 5% allocation of sales to advertising budget, so $10,000 of sales will yield a $500 budget for advertising to month 2. So now you start keeping track that month 1 sales advertising allocation will go to month 2. So $500 of ad spend will be spent on month 2. So you set your budget every month for each listing. You can have your own portfolio for each listing group, or however the structure your advertising is based on. Some people do it by the variation group, some people do it individual listing, some people do it by each variation. So you can set a portfolio for each of these listings group, or depending on your structure. And in this example, you have $10,000 on month 1, so $500 will be the budget for your portfolio for that listing in month 2. And you keep repeating that, right? So let's say month 2, you have another $1,000 in sales, then month 3, you have a $500 budget for that portfolio or that listing. And that's how we suggest on budgeting. That way you never overspend, because at the end of the day, it's all about profit, right? Unless you're scaling, then you have a higher ACOS goal. But at the end of the day, you always want to keep within budget, so you're always profitable and you're aware of what your bottom line is. And you're hitting that bottom line. And finally, when we're talking about structure or strategy of an advertising campaign, the intuition part of a PPC campaign, and a lot of people don't mention that it really depends on your budget, what your strategy is, right? So if you have a very low budget, let's say $100, $200 a month, that's a very low budget. That means you should focus more on like very narrow scope of targeting. Like you're targeting things that you for sure know that these people are looking for something that your product is relevant to. So relevancy is extremely important for a small budget campaign. And then as you get more sales, your campaign grows, your budget grows, then the more broad and speculative, more discovery campaigns you can do to get more new sales, discover new keywords, new segments of a market that you're not aware of in your initial campaign creation portion of your advertising campaign structure part. Hope that makes sense. And that's the playbook we suggest right now. It is getting very competitive, so there's not much room for error. If you don't keep track of these, you don't keep track of your budget, you don't have ACOS goals, you're going to lose money. It's just, unless you have like a killer product, right? If you have a killer product, then it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to make money. But for most of us in the Amazon space, we don't really have a product that's amazing, patented, and a huge barrier of entry. So, and I just want to finish on some examples that it does depend about your product does matter too, right? And this is one of our accounts where we sell mostly products that can be easily sourced from a Chinese supplier. Obviously, it's branded. We have a good brand, but overall, though, the products doesn't have a high barrier of entry. So ACOS will be a little higher than a company that has a strong brand. And I'll give you an example. So 16.7% is pretty good, but we have another account that we apply the same strategies, but this product here that they sell in this account is much more unique, much greater barrier of entry, an extremely good brand. And you can see the ACOS here, it's like 33% less, 40% less. So this goes to show that your product does matter on ACOS, because at the end of the day, your product competitiveness will affect how performance of your campaigns, your advertising. So your product does matter as well. Conversions do matter in your listing. Advertising is just getting those eyeballs onto your product. At the end of the day, your listing has to convert the eyeballs into a sale. So I hope you found this video helpful. If it did provide some value to you, please subscribe and leave a thumbs up. It takes very little effort from you, and it makes a massive impact on how YouTube ranks my content. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.